look at decimals. You might have heard other words that start with DEC, like a decagon, a shape that has 10 straight sides, or maybe a decade, which is 10 years. Decimals help us to work with tenths. Let's remind ourselves about the 10 frame. We're using the 10 frame to represent one whole. What is each counter worth? Yes, that's right, it's worth 1/10. Do you remember the last lesson when we were counting in tenths? Let's do it again. Count along with me. 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, 6/10, 7/10, 8/10, 9/10, 10/10, which is the same as one whole. You're going to need a pencil or pen and a piece of paper for this slide. So if you haven't got them with you, just pause the video for a second and go and get them. Okay, what I want you to do now is think about this place value grid. You know how to write numbers in a place value grid like this. Can you write down 4 numbers that you could make in this place value grid? Again, pause the video. Okay, have you got your 4 numbers? I'm going to show you 4 numbers that I've thought of and see if you can say them. Yep, that one's 153. There's 1 in the hundreds column, 5 in the tens column, and 3 in the ones column. Here's my next number. 8 in the tens column and 6 in the ones column. So that's 86. Remember, we don't have to put numbers in all of the columns. Here's my next number. That's an easy one. It's just 7. And here's my last number. How do you say that one? Yes, it's 504. Remember, if we've got no tens, we have to put a 0 in the tens column this time to separate it from the 5 and the 4. Could we use this place value grid to write the number 7/10? No. Looks like we're going to make some changes to place value grids. So, if we want to use tenths, we're going to need a new place value column. There it is. Notice the tenths column is to the right of the ones column. We know that because tenths are less than 1, in the same way that ones are less than tens and tens are less than hundreds. So that we know we're looking at numbers that are less than 1, we use a decimal point to write numbers containing tenths. Can you see the decimal point in the grid between the ones and the tenths? There it is. Let's look at how we use it. This place value grid only has ones and tenths. There are 0 ones. There is 1/10. We can write that number as 0.1. What about this place value chart? How many ones are there? That's right, there are no ones. How many tenths are there? Counting them up, we can see there are 6/10. Thinking about how we could write that down, 0 in the ones column, 6 in the tenths column, don't forget the decimal point, the number is 0.6. This time we're using plain counters instead of place value counters, but that works in just the same way. We can see there are no ones. We can see there are 7/10. So the number 0 in the ones column, 7 in the tenths column, 0.7. Don't forget that important decimal point. This number is a little bit different. This time there are 3 ones and there are 4/10. So we write this number as 3.4. 3 to represent the ones and 4 to represent the tenths after the decimal point. let's go back to our 10 frame. Remember, the whole 10 frame represents one whole. We now know how to write the fractions as decimals. 1/10 is the same as 0.1. 2/10 is the same as 0.2. Carrying on, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9 for 9/10. Let's think carefully. The next number is going to be 10/10. But we can't have 10 in one place value column, so we don't have 0.10. We just say one whole. 10/10 is always the same as one whole. We don't need a decimal point this time because we haven't got any other tenths. We have one whole and no more tenths. Pause the video here and have a go at the first 5 questions on the worksheet. Remember, if you get stuck, you can go back and play the video again. Let's look at number lines again. How many equal parts is the number line divided into? You probably don't need to count them. Yes, the number line is divided into 10 equal parts. That's what we've been working with throughout the lesson. This time when we count up, we're going to count up in decimals. Remember, decimals are another way to represent tenths. So, after 0, we've got 1/10, 0.1, then 2/10, 0.2, then 0.3, keep counting with me, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, and then we have 1. To practice working with decimals on number lines, pause the video and have a go at questions 6 and 7 on the worksheet. Now we're going to look at comparing decimal numbers. Which of these numbers is greater? The number on the left is 5/10. The number on the right is 3/10. So we can see 5/10 is greater than 3/10. We could write this using decimals. 0.5 is greater than 0.3. Can you remember the symbol we use to represent greater than? That's the one. 0.5 is greater than 0.3. The point of the symbol is pointing at the smaller number, which is 0.3, 3/10. Let's think about another question like the last one. The number in the place value grid on the left is 4/10. The number in the place value grid on the right is 6/10. So, what words or symbols do we need to complete the sentences? 4/10 is, yes, less than 6/10. We could say 0.4 is less than 0.6. And don't forget the symbol, 0.4 is less than 0.6. Remember, the point of the symbol points at the smaller number. You may have noticed that sometimes I say the numbers as 0.4 and sometimes I say 0.4. That's just 2 ways of saying the same thing. Look at the numbers in these 2 place value grids. What's the same and what's different? In the one on the left, we can see 1 in the ones column. In the one on the right, we can see 10 in the tenths column. But hold on, we can't have 10 in any place value column. We need to do an exchange. If we have 10 tenths, we can exchange them for 1. 1 is equal to 10 tenths. Let's make that exchange. Okay, now we can see that the numbers are the same. That's the end of this